Thank you so much. So United Way of Central Maryland has been serving tirelessly the Central Maryland community for nearly 100 years. And within the neighborhoods and the communities and the individuals that we work with, we build deep and trusting relationships. We engage by listening and taking action. The 6 jurisdictions that we serve is Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Harford and Howard Counties. Next slide, please. Our areas of impact include health, housing, education, and economic advancement. Next slide. The Food Resiliency Grant is to support smaller nonprofits to amplify the power of communities to meet the critical nutritional needs of residents so that they may live healthier and happy lives. Next slide. Just a brief overview, and this is information that you've probably seen in our press and also the RFP, but it is a $10,000 grant per year for 2 years, so that's $20,000, and it's up to $20,000. The grant award period is January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2026, and that combined is a 2-year period. And the number of total awards, there will be 6, 1 from each of the jurisdictions that we just mentioned. Next slide. So this is our timeline, and today is the day of the information session. Thank you again for participating. The grant application submission deadline is Thursday, September 12th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And just to point out, the application is in Community Force, and we're going to talk about that just so everyone's comfortable with how that works. It's really important for you to start the application before 4 p.m. because it will take people, or I should say 3 p.m., right? Like not the last minute. It will take some time to do this work. Decisions announced is early November 2024. And the grant period, as I've stated, is January 2025 through December 2026. And the first year grant payment will be made in January 2025. Next slide, please. Rob, I think this is yours.
This is me. Hi, everybody. I have the fun eligibility slides. So let me share that just first, United Way, we really try to find the right balance between, not being over administrative and burdensome for our community partners, but recognizing that, we need to be good stewards of the funding that we're entrusted with from our donors. So we've landed on these kind of eligibility guidelines that, so first of all, this is for nonprofits. So you need to demonstrate your nonprofit status. We're looking for organizations that are currently in good standing with the state of Maryland, Department of Assessments and Taxation. You should be able to find and upload or take even a screenshot of this with the current date and share that in your application. I advise you not to wait until the day you're submitting to pull that up, because sometimes people actually are not in good standing and they don't even know it. And it's largely because they didn't file a report on time, and you can usually take care of it pretty quickly. So I would check that out right away. We're looking for organizations that practice non-discrimination. This opportunity, and we've been leaning towards overall, we have our neighborhood grants, which many of you probably have heard of. And this opportunity as well, where we're looking for organizations that have an annual operating budget of $500,000 or less. So you'll need to demonstrate that as well. And it's for the current fiscal year, your current fiscal year that you're in. We have required fiscal documents, which I will share with you in 2 slides from now. A lot of people ask if you can use a fiscal agent, and you can use a fiscal agent if you're not a 501c3 or don't have some of the other things in place. You could use a fiscal agent, and there's a way in the application to identify who that is. And some of the documents that you need to provide, like the nonprofit status and the good standing and the financial document, would be provided from your fiscal agent, because it'll be that organization that's ultimately accountable towards the spending, et cetera, for if you are awarded a grant. Next slide. Obviously, we're supporting folks who serve in our footprint, one of the either Baltimore City or one of the other five surrounding counties listed here. You may submit only one application per organization. And if you currently have a different grant with us, a neighborhood grant or other that does not, you are still eligible to apply for this. And then here's the somewhat complicated, so I will hopefully explain this in a way that you understand it. Depending upon your organization's gross income from charitable contributions, you need to have one of the following financial documents. We've changed these within the last few years to make it so that the smaller organizations, and this is aligned with kind of state practice, by the way. So smaller organizations are $300 or less. We just need an internal document like a Form 990 profit loss statement, your current organizational or budget, something like that. If you have revenue of 300 to 750,000, which most of you aren't going to go with 500,000 unless you're using a fiscal agent. For those, you would need to submit a financial review, and that's a specific document, and it is actually performed by an independent auditor. So hopefully that is something you have already in hand. And then if your organization has over $750,000 annual gross income, then in that case, because of the requirement that you have a annual budget of under 500,000, that would really probably only apply to those of you that are using a fiscal agent. That fiscal agent, if this is their annual gross income, they would need to provide a financial audit. And in all cases, we're talking about in the financial review and audit, we're looking for something that has been completed within the last 2 fiscal years. I expect we'll have some questions about this moving forward, but let's move on. And I'm going to pass the baton to Benjamin, who's going to dive into the more of the substantive information about the grant opportunity and the project categories. There you go, Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Rob. So we are asking folks to submit an application that falls under at least one of these project categories. Now, you can tackle both of them, but we want to make sure that the projects are falling under at least one of them. And those two categories are going to be building the resiliency of food production sites and then increasing food access in underserved areas. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of definition of what we're talking about here and what we're looking for, with building resiliency of food production sites, we're looking for really resident-driven, community-based food resiliency work that's focused on the source of food. So some of the examples that we've given here are food hubs, food aggregators, community gardens, urban gardens would be great, CSAs, food forests, it's broad on purpose so that folks who are doing work that focuses on the roots, literally in this case, of where food is coming from can apply for this grant. And I'm sure we'll have questions about this. Please do send those onward and we'll address them at the end. Next slide, please. Our second main category would be increasing food access in underserved areas. Now, these could be projects that are not necessarily working with the source of food, not necessarily working on food production, but are looking at initiatives that help increase access to folks in underserved areas. We'll see us talk a little bit later about healthy food priority areas, and we'll define that for you. Particularly for folks who are in Baltimore City, that will be important. But this is really just getting that food, healthy food, nutritional food to folks in areas that are underserved, whether that's because of grocery store closures or socioeconomic barriers. So we'll give more definition to that later as well. Next slide, please. So selection criteria. So these are this is kind of what we're looking for here. We're looking for projects that are engaging communities, and we'll give some examples of that as well. And we're really looking for projects that are advancing upstream solutions to food insecurity. On the next slide, I'll tell you what we mean when we say upstream. The third thing is showing promise of positive impact through the promotion of sustainable practices and expanding the availability and affordability of nutritious food. So these items here, these selection criteria, are items that we would want to see evidenced in every application, in every project, going along with at least one of the two prior project categories. Next slide, please. So when we talk about upstream solutions, we are really looking to invest in projects that are addressing the causes of food inequity, to build food resiliency within your community. And we're doing this because we would love to take this upstream approach at really tackling these roots, to prevent some of the more downstream results of not tackling those roots. So to give you an example of what we're talking about, a food pantry, while a very valuable community resource, is addressing the symptom of a larger issue, while something, for example, like education and training, can help address some of the root causes of food inequities in our communities. We're really looking to focus on systemic issues here, rather than those immediate symptoms of immediate food need. The thought process here is that we would like to, this is the first year of us doing this Food Resiliency Grant, and we're very excited about it. And we want this to be something that always is focused on sustainability in your area. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass this back on to Rob.
Okay, so just thank you, Benjamin, for going through what we're looking for. Some things we're not looking for are kind of general operating requests, like we're looking for this to really address a specific project with specific outcomes that you all are presenting. We want this to be, we're looking to fund organizations that are embedded in the community, not an organization that's going to kind of come in and start something new. In that, I mean, there's a chance that you can certainly have partners in this application that are not currently in kind of in the jurisdictions, but it has to really feel like this is a problem that's been identified within the jurisdiction from from community members, and then it's a local solution. We want to make sure that they're obviously that these really we're directly addressing, aligning with the criteria of the grant agreement, with the selection criteria that Benjamin just outlined. And there's in all of this information, by the way, pretty much everything we're presenting to you with with a little bit of depth provided from Benjamin on some of the details, but all these things around eligibility and all that are really outlined in the RFP. So obviously, please take a close look at that, and you'll see. And some of the ineligible activities include religious activities, lobbying activities as well. Next slide. And another priority of United Way, in addition to obviously the quality of the applications and all that, and this is not a requirement, but we are prioritizing applications that are the lead applicants are led by Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC leaders, and/or folks who are from marginalized communities and kind of the harder to reach populations within Central Maryland. For Baltimore City, they have established these target communities and populations. They're called the Healthy Food Priority Areas. And there's information on how to find out about those healthy food priority areas in the RFP. And there's a priority for projects that are based within those priority areas. Okay, next slide. All right, we're going to pause here for a second. After this, we're going to walk through. We're going to talk a little bit about some tips for just some basic grant writing tips, but we're also going to walk through our portal, Community Force. So that's coming up. But in terms of the content, eligibility, things that we've gone over so far, we want to see if are any questions that we can address right now. I've been looking at the chat. There are mostly just hellos from the chat. So I don't see any questions posted yet. If you have a question, please put it in there and we will try to address a few before we move on. And there'll be an opportunity for questions again at the very end.
We do have one question. It's from Michelle Brown. She wants to know, is it safe to say not distribution of food boxes, but rather healthy market foods?
Michelle, could you ask that question again with a little bit more context? Or fresh food distribution. Okay. I think I pick up what you're putting down here. Um, I would say either one would feel like an appropriate, depending on the context, would feel like an appropriate project for this grant activity. I think what's going to be really important is providing a lot of context about what would, say, for example, if you're working on food boxes, what's going to be in there, who's going to be receiving them, where they're going to be, and all of those relevant details. But fresh food distribution would absolutely be an appropriate project.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So again, you still have the opportunity to put questions in the chat or even come off your mic later on. But why don't we move on?
Hey, Rob, I don't know if you are able to, if you already have something on your computer, but can you start from our website,
Oh, yes,
the funding page?
I can start doing that. Give me 1 second. You say start from our website, yes.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Great.
And then if you could go to our grants page. And that's under that discover, that first option, discover. So the reason why I wanted you all to see this page is because this is where everything currently lives, and any new information will be here. So this is a great place to get familiar with, maybe save it to your favorites. Rob, if you could scroll down. So the two things I wanted to share very quickly with you is that there's a hyperlink to the Community Force portal, which we're going to access, but also the RFP is here. And that's that second hyperlink that says here under with the underscore underline. And then if Rob, when you're ready, if you want to click Community Force, we can get started with that. So as Rob is logging in, you will see that there will be an authentication that will come up shortly. I just want to point out that you would get an email from the email account that you started out with. So first you'd have to create a new account if you don't have an account. And then once you log in, it will send you a authentication code to your email address. It's an 8-digit code. You can either do it like Rob did, type it in with a hyphen in the middle, or you can copy and paste it from the email. Rob, can you explain what this page is?
Pardon me?
Can you just explain this page and maybe why
Oh,
there's so many things
yeah,
there?
I as a I am involved in testing or, applications along the way. And so all the applications that I've ever come into with this email address are listed here. So there's a record of that. If you've applied to us for something in the past, when you get to this point, you should have other things listed as well. And so from here, we would be looking for an opportunity. So if it's something you've started, you would come back and it would be listed here and you can continue. You'll see I have a lot of things that say pending submission, withdrawn, etc. I don't think that the food grant is on here, right? We're starting fresh. So from here, I would go to the search button. That's correct, right,
Yep,
Lillian?
you could do search, but I think it's the third one down. It's up to you as to which one.
Oh, there's the Food Resiliency Grant. I guess I have opened this already. So, yeah, so if you're not on here, you go to search and then you'll see your options. I'm just going to go straight here to Food Resiliency Grants.
So one step that happens before this, because as Rob said, he has an application that he started, you will be pre-qualified to move forward with the grant application. And what it is a series of like 5 questions, and it totally is things that it's obvious, and questions like have you submitted application? Are you a nonprofit? Are you serving one of the jurisdictions? It's questions like that that is straight from the RFP and applicable to this grant. And then once you've done that, you'll be directed to the grant, and you can then have the option to select it, and you would eventually get to this page. And this is the dashboard. And the dashboard is utilized in a number of ways. It's kind of like your homepage, and all of that instruction is important to know. So just please read it. But it also allows you to collaborate, and it gives you instructions on how to do that. You will see, Rob, if you scroll down just a little bit so they can see the bottom part. So these squares are the 3 sections of the application, and each of these squares have to be 100% complete before you can submit. But let's say you're working with a colleague on the project budget, somebody maybe from your finance department or on your team, and you need to collaborate with that. If you follow the instructions for the collaboration, it's that last bullet, that last section, and the second bullet, it'll tell you exactly how to do that. And that way someone can log in and do the work if they need to do it that way, or help you in any way they need to. Again, all of these squares or these sections of the application have to be 100%, and it'll track it that way. Hey, Rob, do you think it'd be okay if we close this and go back to the search and start that way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Looks like I'll have to, hold on a second. Let me stop sharing until I get my act together here. Who knows what I'm sharing with you all, emails and whatnot. All right, let me go back to.
The reason why we're taking this extra measure to do a search is so that those that haven't been in community force and those that haven't started an application, you could see the things that I was just talking about. I hate it when people are describing things that I've never seen before without visually seeing it. So I think it'd be a benefit for you also to see what that looks like.
All right, I'm just going through my authentication again. Okay, so now I'm going to search, correct?
Yes, yes.
Should I
Oh, you can leave that there, Rob.
can leave it? All right.
Um, Let me do one thing while you're doing that. Hold on. Rob, can you go back to my applications? I think you should delete it just to be safe.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was going to let me start another one. That was why I skipped it.
Yeah.
So when I click on that, what do I do? Choose actions, delete. Okay. Now I'm going back to search.
Yep. And you go to view all grants, just like Rob clicked it to that blue button on the right.
Here's our food resiliency grant here. There's some details here. I'm going to press apply. Right,
Mhm.
Lillian?
Yep.
Good, okay.
So this is the pre-qualification questions that we talked about. There's just 5 of them. Rob, can you answer those questions? What jurisdiction, your total annual operating budget? Have you already applied? Rob deleted that application so he can say no. And do you practice non-discrimination? Yes. And then you would want to submit. And then it brings you to this dashboard that we were just talking about. Now, if you scroll down, all of those sections are now at 0 because this is a brand new application. Previously, it was at 100 at some points, and then I think it was below 100 in another section. So we're going to go through each of these very quickly and talk about some things. It's kind of like best practices for using community force, but also how to perhaps present your best project, application. So the first one is organization information. So you'll see a red asterisk next to things that are required. They're also highlighted in red. But what we're looking for is obviously the organization information, and that is the legal name of the organization that you're with. The way I like to describe it is United Way of Central Maryland, also known as UWCM or just United Way. We would need the legal name that's on your documentation, perhaps your IRS determination letter, or the name that's registered with the state of Maryland. So for us, it's the United Way of Central Maryland, Inc. So that is what we would love for you to do as well. Rob, can you scroll down, please? For the EIN, if you see there, it is required. It is a 9-digit number. Many of you probably already know this, but for our grants page, it's important that you enter it the number only, and definitely not any hyphens or digits or dashes or anything like that. You'll also see on the right these circles, blue little circles with an I next to it, like I in the middle. And that is just so you can, there's got guidelines, and it kind of tells you more information that you might find helpful. So please do look at those if you feel like you need to have some more information. And then if you continue to scroll down, we want the executive director information, your organizational financial information. I think for the executive directors, how they identify as a woman or gender nonconforming or whatever the case is, there is the option to prefer not to answer. So, please feel free to answer in the way that is suitable for you. And that's the same for Black, Indigenous, person of color, which we call BIPOC. For the organizational financial information, it is important that the operating budget is $500,000 or less. The default is for a fiscal year from July to June, but please change that if you're using some other type of annual year. And then Rob, if you scroll down to fiscal age and sponsor, it's not going to be there right away. That first question will be there. And if you answer yes, all of these other questions will populate. But if the answer is no, you don't have to respond to these questions. Thank you, Rob, for demonstrating that. Rob, can you talk a little bit about the documents that are required and can maybe upload one?
Yeah, so this was the what we outlined in the PowerPoint presentation, the whichever financial document you're required to based on the guidelines that are in the RFP and that we discussed, you would upload those here. So here are the areas, your determination letter from the IRS. You go to your files. So if I go browse, I'll just go find ours and put it in here. And then you guys get to see grants work, we have a file for grant development materials, for agency attachments, and then our IRS determination letter, which I will click on there, and then you'll see that that determination letter has been uploaded into the system. If you can see that here, right there. If you accidentally clicked on the wrong document, you can click remove here, and it will you can start again, and you'll see the financial document, the certificate of good standing, your board of directors list, and your organization's current operating budget are the required documents here. And then, go ahead, Lillian, here's where you signed with the name it tells you to.
Yes. Thank you, Rob. And then just one quick thing, each file that can be uploaded in Community Force must be 10 megabytes or less. So just so you know, if it's for whatever reason it's not kind of like pulling in the document you're trying to upload, you might want to check the file size just to make sure it's the right size. Okay, Rob, do you want to go to the next page?
Yeah, I wanted to point out this little interesting quirk about Community Force is that the signing to confirm this has to match who it knows is actually doing this application. So it tells me specifically, enter your name as Robert Clark here. So you just type in Robert Clark, and that's your way of confirming that the application information is correct. All right. Since I uploaded that one document, I will save and return to the dashboard. And we'll have a slight bump in the percentage that is completed for organizational information.
Excellent. So if we go to project description narrative, we'll talk about that a little bit. Again, you're probably seeing the pattern here. The asterisk and red boxes are all required. You know, we want to know in this section about what your project description, what the project title might be, if you have one. Helpful for us to learn as much as we can about this process. We have volunteer grant reviewers who look at all of our grant applications and review them to see should be allocated funding. And this information is just not for us to understand, but it makes it easier for them to digest and understand what they are reviewing. So we are looking for just one Central Maryland jurisdiction for the project, and some organizations serve multiple jurisdictions, but this project is specific to one jurisdiction, so there should be just one selected here. And then the areas, communities impacted. You know, communities, Rob, do you want to maybe talk about the definition of community?
Yeah, you can. So this is just a little bit more, right? So let's say I clicked Harford County. Maybe there is a specific community within Harford County that we're focused on, or you could even define the community if it is, you know, a certain population that this is going to focus on as well. So it's pretty broad. I would say in Baltimore City, where there's a priority around those identified communities, that you would want to make sure that you were clear that you know, either here in the narrative that you were working within one of those priority communities. Other than that, this gives us a little bit more, you know, the counties are very large. It gives us a little more detail about where your focus would be within the county. So that's it. And then for this primary focus, it's, you know, you're selecting one of the two options here on the drop down.
Excellent. So now let's get into this narrative section. And then earlier you probably heard me say, you know, please start earlier than later, because sometimes there's word counts here, and sometimes it might not be as easy to figure out what you're trying to say in a brief and very strict amount of words. The word count is important here in Community Force, because if you go over, it may lock the system and it may not allow you to continue. And then it might require some help desk support or my support And again, this is something that could take time to fix. So just, you know, if you could, it might be a great idea to look at what we're asking in these questions, maybe writing it outside of community force. Also, you could copy and paste it. It does respond well to that. I see a question and I'm trying to figure out if it's related to what I'm talking about. I had some connection issues, miss. Oh, okay. Yes, there will be a recording. Yeah, okay, thank you. So for question number 1, it is all of these 6 questions are found in the RFP. So again, you can look at it that way. But question number 1, Rob, if you can scroll up a little bit. It's just wanting to know what is the purpose of the grant. And this is 60 words or less. And then number 2, tell us about your organization and its connection to the community you propose to serve. And for this question, I think we've really covered what resilient-driven food initiative and projects are. So I don't know if we need to go into that anymore at this point, but if you do have more questions, you're certainly welcome to ask them in the chat. For number 3, it's kind of tell us about your community. And one of the guidances that we provided is Healthy Food Priority Area, HFPA. Benjamin, can you maybe talk about what that is and why it's referenced here?
Yeah, absolutely. So healthy food priority areas were designated as areas specifically within Baltimore City that are at higher need of having increased access to healthy foods. And that's for a plethora of reasons, redlining, lack of grocery stores, lots of grocery stores or supermarkets or points of food access, leaving that area, places where there is over-reliance on corner stores for all foods, as well as looking at the income of the average income of these communities. So we've included in the RFP link where you can follow that to get a little bit more idea of where these are. But these areas in Baltimore City are scattered around East and West Baltimore, South Baltimore, Sandtown, Winchester, Druid Heights. They cover big, large areas of land. They often have heightened folks living in these areas. I've shown that they have like heightened levels of chronic disease linked to nutrition, and they're very high need in terms of food access, healthy food access. So that's why we wanted to put that emphasis on bringing this grant into those areas.
Thank you. That was great. So for question number 4, it says, you know, tell us about your project. And again, this is one of those where we've covered a lot of this already, but there's some verbiage in here that I'm hoping Benjamin can also explain a little bit more. And it wants to know, you know, if the project employs upstream methodology, and if you could maybe talk a bit about what that means.
Sure. So upstream methodology, like I talked about a little bit before, would be focusing the rooting of how your project is rooted and how your project is designed, as well as the implementation of your project on addressing those root causes of the outcomes that are showing up in your area, in your community. So that can really differ depending on where you are and what the folks in your community are dealing with. But we want to see that your project is innovative in the way of thinking beyond just addressing the immediate needs and looking at what is causing those needs in your specific area. And that'll be a little bit different, even if you go 2 miles down the road, and we recognize that. So for your area, for this, we really just want to hear about in your specific area, you know, what is causing these issues and what are you going to do with these grant funds to address it?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Rob, can you scroll down just a little bit? So there's question number 6. Tell us how your project will benefit your community. And then there's a question about marketing. How did you hear about this grant opportunity? We really appreciate you sharing that as well. Rob, anything that you want to add that we may or may not have covered that you were
I would just say as advice, to look at these, there's the questions and there's the word max, right? I do, like Lillian said, I highly recommend you write your answers out in a Word document, do your editing there, use the application to check your number of words, not characters, but words in this case. Make sure it's under the minimum and then cut and paste it into here. If you're right on the border, double check because sometimes, the system will interpret a word a little bit differently. So every now and then I do grant applications as well. I know having a 300 word limit and I put it in and then the application I'm using interprets as a 301 or 302 words for whatever reason. That usually happens more in characters than in words, I guess maybe with hyphenated words, they can treat them differently or something like that. So just be mindful of that because you'll see them on the lower right corner, the number of words you have. And then as you're crafting your responses to each of these, please look at this, and you'll see it on the RFP as well. Please look at the things that we're very clear and specific about what we want to go into those answers, and just know that that is the basis of how they will be reviewed. They'll be looking that you covered these things in this column, and then also very much so how what you're presenting is aligned with the stated kind of grant selection criteria that we mentioned early in the RFP. So those are real keys to success for you all in this and all applications, really.
Rob, can you type in something so that we can show them how that looks and works, and then we can go back to the dashboard when you're ready?
I love food. Then you'll see there's some answer there. That was only 3 words. So I'm safe there. I'm going to save and return to the dashboard. What are you telling me? There we go. So yeah, there are a couple, I selected the neighborhood and put some narrative in one, and you'll see I'm up to 27% complete.
So we have one more section we want to briefly show you so that we've gone through every section. And this is the budget. This is the project budget. This is obviously not your operating budget. We want to know the different funding budget line items that this grant will cover. And staff salaries and personnel is one number, but it's probably 2 parts for you. It's salaries and or benefits if that's applicable. Stipends, for non-staff, we would want to know that. And then Rob, if you scroll down, there's opportunity for supplies, other, and then the total. And then the total is, it can't go over, I believe, 20,000.
Yep.
The additional, Rob, can you type in some numbers just to test that?
Yeah, let me show you. Let me point out a couple things, other things. So just it's mentioned here, but just remember this is a 2-year $20,000 grant, and we will be, as you're planning for this and reflecting this in your application, just know that we're planning on providing 10,000 for year 1, and then after year 1, the second 10,000. So it will be spread out over those 2 years. Wherever you put in a number, let's say we'll just put in $6,000 for salary. Don't put in commas like I did, but then erased. For anywhere where you put something in, then it drops down and asks for additional information. In the case of salaries, it asks for a number of staff positions and then a little bit of a description here. So please provide, something that indicates how did you get to the $6,000? Is it somebody who makes $60,000 and it's 5% of their time a year over 2 years, or whatever those calculations are, or hourly rate or whatever, just some indication that we understand what went into that number. There's information for stipends and equipment, and any other place you put in something. Let's say you put $1,000 in for stipends, it's going to be very similar. It's going to ask you how many stipends and some details on who you'll be providing these stipends to. You'll see it adds up. There's a calculate button here. It should be doing it automatically, but just in case it doesn't seem like it's right, click on that and it'll recalculate. So right now it's adding up to 7,000.
Hey, Rob, can you
Um,
make it add some more stuff so it goes up to 20?
Sure. Let's say a big part of it. I'm just going to add 13,000 to contracts and consultants. And this becomes, by the way, this becomes a required field. So if you're wondering if you've put in all your dollars and it's still saying you're not at 100%, remember that any place you added a dollar, any of these boxes that opens up, it then becomes one of the required fields that you need to provide some information on for it to be complete. Okay, we're at 20,000 now.
Perfect.
And then we're not expecting necessarily this 20,000 to cover all the work that's part of this project. So if you have a bigger plan and this is part of that, we're asking for you to share kind of what the total cost of your proposed project is and what additional funding sources you have. So if this is a $20,000 project and you're not, you're not reflecting kind of other costs or whatever, you can say no. And these two things below here are the total cost. But if it is, let's say, if you do say yes, and what you really have is like oh, that's yes, right? If you say no, if you say yes, then those will disappear. If you say no, sorry, I got that backwards. You say that really the total cost of this project is 50,000. And then, what are the other sources of the $10,000 or the $30,000 are coming from what sources? You either have those in hand or you're expecting them through the grants that you're applying for, et cetera. Just a little detail around that information.
Rob, we have a question from Benjamin. You want to go ahead and ask that?
Sure, yeah, I just thought this might be useful. So say we're looking at a project that is 17,500 in total, for example. So does the total grant amount need to be split evenly down the middle for year one and year two? Or can a grantee receive 10,000 in year one and 7,500, the remaining amount, in year two? Are there any options there that folks can utilize?
I would say if you're asking for less than 20,000 over the 2 years, then we can definitely split it that way. I think right now we're saying we're granting just up to 10,000 in each of the years, though. We're not going to front the 20,000 in year one, for example. So just plan, because we really want this to be, we understand that this work takes some time and we want to work with you over the course of these 2 years. And so I would just consider that it's up to 10,000 each year for the 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, sir.
There's another confirmation button at the bottom, and it's basically what we would add to the end of a grant application. And it's just also confirming not just the amount, but the entire grant application is up to $20,000 grant application for $10,000 per year.
Can I save and return now?
Yes, please. So again, that dashboard has changed. These are at 100%. You're feeling good about the work, then you should submit it. If you submit it and you have to go back, it's a process. It's not impossible, but just know that you'd need to contact me directly and I would have to work with you on updating that. And that can be a little bit time consuming as well. So just please be very thorough in what you're trying to do here. And once you feel good about it, then you should hit submit and know that, we're going to take it to the next step and then go through the grant review. So Rob, I think that we've kind of covered everything here. Does anyone have any questions about this process?
All right, why don't we go back to the slides then? I'll stop
Okay.
sharing. We had a couple of slides, I think, Teresa. So these are pretty straightforward. I will breeze through these. But they are, they are worth thinking about. So just, make sure you're reading the questions thoroughly and using the prompts, like I mentioned in the in the side around what we're looking for. As we mentioned, draft your narrative in a Word document and cut and paste it into the application is our suggestion. Be clear about, don't assume that the reviewers have, knowledge about your organization, or, try to stay away from industry jargon, and, or at least be specific about what that is. Pay attention to your character limits. So, be succinct. That's one of the biggest challenges, is you have a lot to say, and then taking the time to refine that into something that's really succinct and hits the main points. Obviously, put your information in the right places, looking at the outcomes. Make sure that it's clear that you'll be able to kind of measure your success. And we're not looking for, obviously, with this level of investment, we're not, expecting you to have an outside evaluator or anything like that. But we do want to, know what does success look like? What are you going to be looking for, and how are you going to measure that you've, made those that you have kind of moved towards those outcomes. And as we look at the budget too, of course, making sure it makes sense, but you should, if you read the budget, there are times where you read an application budget and you're like, this doesn't make any sense relative to what I just read as the application, right? You talk about one thing in your application, but that's not reflected in the budget. So just make sure that there's alignment there. That's how, largely how the budget will be assessed. And that, yeah, everything is aligned. So we already did the application walkthrough. So now we're, a couple things to remember on the portal, Lillian, if you want to
Sure.
sum this up,
Save
and
your
then we'll look for any last questions and answers and wrap it up. Go ahead, Lillian.
Sounds good. And again, you guys are awesome, and I'm sure that the work that you're doing is incredible. And so this information is not intended to diminish any of your work or your ability to submit grants. But through our grant portal, we know that Community Force has challenged people in the past, and that's why we are trying to make it as user-friendly as possible for everyone. So again, please save work when leaving sections and answer all the required questions. Follow the word limits. Note the things that are numbers only with no digits or hyphens or anything like that. And then again, once you're complete, 100% complete, and you're feeling good about what you wrote, and you're able to really tell the tale of what you would love to do with this funding, then you should hit submit. Yes, no questions, even if the answer is no. So those are probably required. So you would probably already have answered those. And the attachments are really important too. Please be careful that you're attaching the right document. It can slow us down a little bit if you accidentally attach two, like, board of directors lists when we really needed one board of directors list and an operating budget. So we'd have to circle back to you for that type of information. So yeah, please get us the right things, and then we're good. We're good to go. Well, thank you all so very much for your participation and going through this process with us. If you have questions, you're welcome to send those directly to us, and I will put my email address in the chat. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. And I look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you all. Take care.